Well, let's go ahead and take a look here at those standings and see how everything is breaking down after this last game. Again, it's going to be hard now for Dignitas, or really they just don't have a chance to make it, but they're looking a lot better with that win. But up at the top, sitting Elevate and Energy, 3-0, and then not too far behind them, Trifecta undefeated as well.
Trifecta was the only team yesterday, I believe, out of those 6 that dealt with only 2 matches. So for Trifecta, today is the real playmaker day for them, because now that they're having to deal with Elevate and Energy, and considering that Elevate and Energy are also going to play each other at some point today, and they're basically guaranteed, one of those teams is guaranteed to qualify.
And don't forget, SpaceStation still have the slightest chance of qualifying. They have to force a 3-way tie to do so. All they have to do is win the rest of their games, hope that whichever one of Elevate or Energy wins the remaining of theirs, and then who knows, they can actually come out on top.
Yeah, that's a lot to say. Basically, they need the stars to align. That's what SpaceStation
All
Gaming
6 games need to go the way that they want them to.
Literally perfectly. They need to win from here out, and then they need to wish upon a star. But you're not wrong. SpaceStation do still have a chance. They're not 100% out of this, and that's what's going to be next up for us here. SpaceStation going up against Noble. Alpha Jackal, you're my coach here on the desk. I got to ask you, these Noble boys are now down 0-4. They're going into this game, but you still have a lot of pride. You still want to win. What do you tell them to make sure they got their heads right going into this match?
At this point, you just say, we're down, we're not going to qualify, but this is the time to gain experience, to learn. Just go out there, have some fun, and surprise them with whatever we have left in the tank.
Daco, you're not a coach, but what would you be thinking? What'd your mindset be? How are these Noble guys feeling going into this?
As a player, you never want to be the team that doesn't get any wins, especially at a LAN event. If anything, Noble should be as motivated as ever just to try and prove to everybody at home who's watching them play that they're still capable of actually competing with the other teams here. And on top of that, just knowing the players of Noble as well as I do, these guys really all feel like they have something to prove. And I highly doubt that we're going to see another fold-over match from them.
I agree with you 100%. We're talking about now here SpaceStation going up against Noble. These are 2 North American teams that haven't had much success just yet, but they also haven't looked weak in any of these games. Yes, SpaceStation didn't win yesterday, but I mean, they've got Zapman on that team. They got Jigz. They got a lot of strong players.
I think my primary concern for SpaceStation, and at least the matches that they played so far against the European teams, they keep trying to throw Homiefe onto these jungler assassins that just aren't really working out too well, and you can't afford to build full damage like you normally would on an assassin right now. That's just not how the meta is really working out. You need to get a little bit of those defenses online, and I think that Homiefe has really struggled in trying to combine that with the rest of his team, because even when they find themselves with an early lead, they're just having an incredibly difficult time trying to stay alive through the team fights.
And is that how you feel here, Jackal? What do you kind of think has been SpaceStation's main problem here lately? You think it's kind of Homiefe and the picks that they've had for him, or where do you think it's not gone right for them just yet?
I think it's just been the fact that they've not really performed as well as they should have done from behind. We see that when they get ahead, they're able to play the lead extremely well and just take a game by themselves. But once they're behind, once Homiefe gets a bit behind, struggles a bit, the whole team just starts to collapse a tiny bit.
Yeah, and then we got Homiefe right here for you up on the screen. That jungler there for SpaceStation Gaming. We know how well all these guys can play. It's sort of a similar story that we saw with Dignitas, where it's like a superstar roster, basically, that we're talking on here, but it just hasn't clicked for him just yet.
I don't think it's been necessarily as rough for SpaceStation. I think a large part of what helped them out was that most teams were probably expecting them to get easy 3-0'd by LG, and then when they actually put up the fight against Luminosity and actually almost ended up taking it away from them in that set, that kind of fueled SpaceStation into feeling as though they had a very solid chance of the group stages. And of course, their chances are still alive. It's just their fate isn't as much in their hands as that of Trifecta.
That's right. They're going to have to do quite a good bit of work here. They've got a couple of matchups coming up for them. They got this first one here against Noble. Then they're going to be playing Dignitas and Trifecta. So it's a tough schedule from the rest of the way. It's tough everywhere. These groups are real strong, but they got to pull out all 3 of these wins. And then, as we talked about, kind of got to hope that literally every other match goes the way they need it to.
And I do think they have the potential to win all 3 of their other games. It's just, do I see Elevate and Energy not winning all of their remaining games? No, I think both of them will potentially get onto those 4 wins and both qualify. They just have to keep on playing and just hope and just pray to God that one of them has an off day.
Yeah, and right now, like we said, SpaceStation need all the stars to align. That means Noble are kind of more in the position to play in spoiler here right now. So Noble take this win. They basically just put SpaceStation out of it. And if we're looking at Noble and who's going to be able to do it, they got a lot of superstars, but in particular, Skeeledon's looking really good for them there too. And we were able to sit down and talk with Skeeledon.
When we got relegated out of SPL, I don't remember who took our spot, but it was pretty much just, I was in college and I'm just like, I need the money somehow. So like I skimmed by, and right after we got into relegations again, we didn't make it. That was like the decision. It's like, can I keep playing this? And luckily, Noble actually ended up picking me up, so I got to continue playing it. I really didn't have an off switch, where if I died like 3 times, it's like I just kept going in like I had a lead. Now I've like kind of registered, it's like there's different ways you have to play the game. If you have a lead, you push it. If you don't, then you try to take what you get and then like punish them. And I think that's actually what led me to be a little more consistent this season, was really applying those lessons instead of just trying to like make something changes. I do W key a lot, don't get me wrong. Like I do love playing aggressive, but it's, I want to say actually pretty calculated. It's like if I see an enemy going to the speed buff and I know like they're looking to defend it, you can go gold. I like taking advantage of what the enemy does when they think it's correct, because them changing their playstyle will also affect them in the future. So I would say the people that actually tilt on our team the most would be me and Wubbn, and Moswal is just such a positive influence in that sense. Like, I don't think he's ever said a negative word in comms, where it's just like, it's hard to be tilted or angry or anything around him. It's just like, and that just makes playing in the team environment so much easier, and just you want to show up and you want to do best. When I first joined, it was mostly just like I would issue orders, they would just follow them around, but they've like came into their own really. Mozzie started talking a lot more. Like our 3v3's become pretty solid, I think. When we do a gold figure, it's like everyone tosses out ideas and then like we'll talk it over, and it's just like they've actually spent a lot of time helping me like grow into being a shot caller. We have nothing to lose but everything to gain.
And that is Skeeledon, jungler for Noble. We just got through seeing him going up against Dignitas. And on that circuit, he actually kind of got off to about as good of a start on a circuit as you could have wanted. Just couldn't quite close it out, could Noble, in that game.
It's rather unfortunate whenever that kind of situation occurs, but sometimes it just happens. And for a member like Skeeledon, as a player, I know that he's always just trying to pretty much clean reset and then focus on the next game. Now that they're heading into this match with SpaceStation, they need to really look at what went wrong for them in that previous match for Dignitas and make sure to not repeat the same mistakes.
And we heard a little bit from Skeeledon in that video. He was talking about how they have that presence there on the team that helps keep them from tilting. Sometimes he and Wubbn can kind of tilt a little bit. Alpha Jackal, talk to me a little bit about that. When you all are in comms and things aren't going so well, how important is it to have that presence that helps keep things from maybe getting a little off kilter?
It's absolutely necessary at the high level, because as we saw yesterday with Energy just shouting across the arena at Team Dignitas, you can't let that affect you, because if you do, then there's no real opportunity for you to get back into a game that you might probably have done had you not had that tilt factor on top of you. And going back to Skeeledon in the previous game, I felt he had a very good start, but then didn't transition into that late game like he should have done. He kept on being that primary engage tool for Noble when he should have really let that been onto Wubbn, being that primary engage, waiting for those relics, waiting for those ultimate cooldowns, and then engaging onto the backline as secondary engage.
And talking about Skeeledon, they're going to have their work cut out with him, between him and Moswal up against SpaceStation here. We haven't really talked much about it, but in particular, that mid laner for them, Andinster, man, we all know just high level he is, formerly on a world champion team as well, too. So what's going to be there? What are you expecting here from Andinster on SpaceStation Gaming? What do we want to see from him?
This might actually be a more preferable matchup for Noble, just because of the fact that SpaceStation is another North American team. They're a team that Noble is actually pretty familiar with, unlike that of Dignitas and all the other European teams that Noble has had to play against. They kind of know what Andy is going to bring to the table, and they can probably get a better grasp of what sort of composition SpaceStation is going to be looking for, and that is actually probably better suited to their advantage.
And no team wants to go into the Super Regionals, come out without any wins. This is Noble's last chance to get that all-important first win, and to be honest, I think they can do it if they play their cards right.
Yeah, I think Noble definitely have a good chance up against it, but not gonna make it easy for them is the rest of SpaceStation Gaming, especially Scary D for SpaceStation Gaming. Rather, Scary D maybe not had the best performance here so far, but we all know he's a little bit better than that.
And to be honest, I'm actually really excited to see this matchup of Scary D against Whalrus. These two have always tried to keep a little bit of a competitive grasp on each other, and now that Whalrus is getting a chance to play against him in a LAN environment, I know that this is an opportunity he's been waiting a very long time for.
I think he didn't have the particularly greatest start, especially in Game 1 against Luminosity, but as the tournament has gone on, as that 5-game set went on, he grew more and more in confidence, even managed to get a revenge solo kill back onto Aquarius, and that's difficult to come back from as a solo laner if you, in Game 1, get soloed. That's not a good look for you. To come back from that and to play as one of the focal points of the team of SpaceStation is very impressive.
No, I gotta agree with you a lot there on that when you're talking about SpaceStation. I've seen these guys walking around. We've sort of been mingling with them, and I don't think they're too down here just yet, Taco. I think SpaceStation know they still have a chance. They can still get in it. You know, we've seen Zap, we've seen Andy kind of walking around and trying to get themselves in the right position to go into this last day of group stage and try and pull out these. They got to win 3 in a row.
It's going to be a really tough competition for SpaceStation, keeping their hopes alive as much as possible because, like you mentioned, even though SpaceStation need to also win all of their matches, they kind of have to rely on other teams to lose a couple of theirs as well. So it is the verbatim of a stars-aligned situation that SpaceStation have landed themselves in. But, of course, if you play your best, you always have the opportunity to come up on top.
Maybe they need some of that Andy Potter magic coming out from that mid lane.
That's what they need. They need the Andy Potter magic to come out for them. Maybe cast a spell on some of these other games to get him to go just the way that they need him to go. So, hey, I might agree with you a little bit. But, yeah, they're a strong team here, SpaceStation. I definitely believe they'll be able to go in here against Noble and actually make something good happen. Is there anything in particular where you want to see them focus? A lane in particular where you want to see SpaceStation try and put some pressure?
For SpaceStation, I think, again, the main focus for them is probably going to have to be on Whalrus. That seems to be the case for the majority of teams that go up against Noble. They tend to put a lot more emphasis on that solo lane side because they know that all Noble are really looking for is that double whammy combination synergy of Whalrus and Skeeledon because Noble is very open about if Whalrus and Skeely get off to a great start, they typically tend to end up winning those kind of games. Of course, that wasn't necessarily the circumstance in that previous match they had against Dignitas, but sometimes it can be really difficult to close out, and also against foreign enemies to a certain extent. They're not used to these European teams, but they have a little bit more understanding of their North American brethren.
I have to ask, what is up with these glasses that he's wearing?
That's clout goggles, and I've already tried contacting his mother several times to come and collect him for them, but it's just not working out. She's just missing. I don't think she wants to take claim of him either.
I think you need the proper authorities, not his mother.
Well, no, I think the mother's the right call, but someone needs to get her maybe a key card or like a badge so she can actually make it into the building. That might be what's slowing her down there, Taco. But either way, even getting the lip balm, got to make sure you're looking good before you go into the game.
It looks like he borrowed some of Emilzi's strats, just trying to make sure that they can do anything and everything to find that final victory for themselves so they don't walk away empty-handed this LAN.
Well, it worked for Emilzi, and so, I mean, if you're going to try and emulate someone, I can't think of a better guy than Emilzi. Lots of things going well for Obey over there. But yes, they do have to try and find it. You kind of hit the nail on the head here. This is their last chance. We're not going to get to see any more Noble here today, their 5th game, and they know that they can come away with 1 win, their last chance to do it here, Alpha.
And yeah, this is probably the favorable matchup for them. We saw on the first day that Trifecta got 3-0'd very quickly, but I don't think that would have been the best matchup. SpaceStation have a very unique style that I think Noble can address and press on very, very well, especially if Skeeledon and Whalrus get off to the start that they usually do.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit, because we've kind of danced around it here some. What's it like? What's the big difference for you all when you go up against those international matchups as opposed to when you're playing other EU teams that you're more familiar with? How big is that difference between those international and local matchups?
You have a lot more work to do in terms of research, because you only have the SPL games on stream available to look at. You don't really have the feeling of, okay, they may have been playing this, but it didn't really feel too well in scrims like you do against teams like Dignitas or against Obey. And making sure you utilize every available resource is very important.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you 100% there. Sometimes when you're going against those international teams, you don't get all the rumblings and everything that you get. I know, Taco, you're one that likes to keep your ear to the ground, so even you sometimes pick up on those rumblings there too. So when you go into those international matchups, you don't have it the same. But this is going to be between two NA teams that have certainly seen each other plenty of times here before.
More than enough times, probably scrimmed against each other a few times at least. And especially being in the LAN environment, I know a lot of these guys have gotten an opportunity to at least play against each other once. So that's always really important to carry on for their next match. And of course, it's all about SpaceStation versus Noble right now, and SpaceStation trying to keep their dreams alive, Noble looking to end them.
That's right. Noble in a position here to try and play spoiler up against SpaceStation who have the long shot. Let's go ahead into those picks and bans to see what it is SpaceStation, what it is Noble try to prioritize. Let's talk a little bit here because we got some information from Noble's last game. What is it that Noble were trying to prioritize, and do you look to see him doing it again here?
I do feel as though since Noble was against Team Dignitas, they probably prioritize their picks and bans a little bit differently than what they're going to pull out against an NA team that they're actually familiar with. I expect the same kind of elimination of the Kakolin, for example, and maybe even eliminating a Soul as well from SpaceStation.
For me, this matchup comes down to which team gets the more aggressive jungle pick. Because Homiefe versus Skeeledon is the big matchup for this one for me.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen a lot of, is how well can Homiefe impact these matchups. It felt like when SpaceStation did get their wins, it was games where he kind of went off. But you're right, some of these meta bans that we've been seeing a lot here of, like the Kakolin, like Osiris, some of these solo lane focused ones, are those ones that you think they need to prioritize, or do they need to go in a little bit more focused to this particular matchup?
Well, we've seen earlier in this tournament that Hercules is coming back into the meta, and we saw a rumblings of Thanatos in a solo lane for one matchup. For Manor also came back in. So there is enough depth in the God pool that they don't really have to focus out the solo lane primarily, but making sure that you get a good matchup if you're going for those low priority picks can be beneficial.
And we've talked about this a lot whenever we're looking at Noble, but Moswal in particular there in the mid lane has a couple guns that he feels more comfortable than others. Do you think they might try and make sure they get something that Moswal's feeling comfortable on?
Well, that was another thing to keep in mind as well, because we've seen a lot of Soul out of Andinster this week, and we've also seen a fair amount of Thoth from Moswal, but both of those mid laners actually have a couple of similarities when it comes to their playstyles, at least. Andinster and Moswal both seem to favor the farming route and then trying to play the more backline positioning before aggressing. Meanwhile, you'll typically see other mid laners that try and hop in on the initial engagements, but for these two in particular, I would really be interested to see if Noble tries to take priority of that Soul, because I know that it's available in Moswal's God pool, and it'd also be taking it away from Andinster.
And they're using a lot of their available time here for their first ban. And that's one thing that you don't really touch upon, is how important those first few bans are. Making sure you get them right can dictate if you've won or lost those picks and ban stages.
And SpaceStation Gaming looking like they're going to be the ones that are pick banning first too, so they can try and ban a little bit more targeted, force Noble to ban out those meta ones, and then they can get exactly what it is they choose to prioritize. We saw from Dig last game though, they kind of adopted a bit of the elevate, that triple tank comp that we've been seeing a little bit more here, and I want to ask y'all too, how do you like that? Do you think that you should try and adopt the meta that sort of develops, or just stick to your own thing?
If it works, it works. And if it maybe works for your team, why not give it a shot, especially for Dignitas in the situation that they were in, where they hadn't had a single win the entire weekend despite being considered such a top-rated team. So they are mechanically strong enough players that they could very easily pick up a wide assortment of gods and still be able to play them efficiently enough to make a strategy work. I think the same story could be said here for SpaceStation.
I think that there's a fine balance you have to find. You don't just carbon copy every single pick and every single ban, because they're just going to beat you with it, and you're not going to have as much practice on it as you would like. So just taking the overall idea of the composition, applying your own picks to it so that they fit that composition is what they should be looking for.
Looks like the very first thing we're seeing happen, though, SpaceStation go ahead and ban away the Circuit pick. That's something we just saw Skeeledon play. The SpaceStation already taking a shot towards the enemy jungler.
Not to mention that Circuit also eliminates that fear of picking up a god such as Hercules or the Erlang Shens. They can have a pretty tough time against that Circuit, so without having to worry about ganks like that out of a jungler like Skeeledon, who tends to also just hang around Whalrus' end of the jungle more often, it's a relatively smart idea.
They do also take away Soul for Noble. So as you all correctly identified, Soul being highly contested between these two mid laners. So that's already been taken away.
And I'm still looking at other mid lane options here. We haven't seen the Ra being picked up. We saw it banned a couple times against a rival in the 3-0 against Dignitas. But it's still such a pivotal pick, especially for Andinster, who has one of the best Ras in the world.
Thoth also getting banned out this time for SpaceStation. Another one that we've seen have some high impact, but Thoth we kind of saw also struggle a little bit with their sieging on the teams that had Thoth. Do you think it's right to go ahead and focus Thoth out this early?
I think it's smart to do because of the fact that it's Moswal who you're playing against in mid lane. He is just such a talented Thoth player that you just don't want to take that kind of risk when he has that final judgment and an ultimate like that can really turn a game upside down despite how massive of a lead the other team might have. It's just not worth the risk in these situations.
And Raijin is a very safe first pick. He has a good ability to leap, has good long-range damage, as well as good early pressure in that mid lane. It can fit onto pretty much every single comp as well, which is why we see it prioritized so early.
Raijin already taken in, and Noble will respond by grabbing the Fafnir Hu-Yi. Those are two that we see picked together if they're lucky enough to have them both available often. They got some good synergy.
And loving both of these picks as the response from Noble. Fafnir going to be able to provide a lot of presence in team fights. Jigz as well won't be able to have that option himself, so the aggressive stance from Noble is really here to try and make a statement, and throwing Wowy onto a hunter like Hu-Yi, where you can actually look to take those early boxing matches against Zapman, maybe even invade that jungle by himself, depending on how SpaceStation are trying to shift their attention on the map.
And what's more, people in the audience might not realize that using your picks can also technically be bans against the other team. If you're taking Fafnir for yourself, you're denying Jigz his best god, and that's exactly what happened here.
And also denying Zapman being on the Hu-Yi too. I mean, we all know just how well he can play, just how quickly he can put a couple highlights on the screen, so limiting those ricochets, so it's only working for Noble. Not surprised to see that at all. They got that Fafnir Hu-Yi, but also not to understate on Fafnir though, that Draconic Corruption, that immunity, we saw it come in big in some earlier sets earlier, so Fafnir has a lot he can do.
Very pensive SpaceStation drafting phase here, though. They're clearly putting a lot of thought into every single selection that they're making, which, I mean, you kind of just expect to be the case when they know just how much is on the line. And the Artio Ganesha, I am not entirely sold on taking Artio for Scary D in the solo lane because it's kind of revealing early on to Noble that they're planning on throwing a Guardian in that solo, which means that Whalrus could potentially have the option to just pick something very aggressive against it.
And this is a very scary Morrigan pick right now. If I'm SpaceStation, I'm looking at banning Raijin right away. It's just such a synergistic pick.
Yeah, when you not just one through the Cosmos, but two to go along with the Morrigan can really be a nightmare to deal with. Either way, we haven't seen too much focus just yet on the jungle as far as picks are concerned, even though we had that Circuit banned away. So the tankier SpaceStation going up against Noble, who have a lot of damage.
Wouldn't be surprised to maybe see a Raijin ban happen here, considering that Skeeledon would probably start to favor that selection, considering that they already have the Morrigan picked up. SpaceStation making the smart move as well, eliminating that Najah. That's another one of Skeeledon's go-tos, and I really just want to see the Raijin ban following that up, because a double Rad ultimate composition from Noble could be very difficult for SpaceStation to handle.
As much as I would like to have seen Noble ban out some junglers, there's also potential that you come up against something you don't have practice against. Some of the more meta picks you're consistently playing against in scrims, you'll obviously have strategies developed to defeat them. But if you're coming up against a Bakasura, which you have no idea is coming, you have to think on the fly and come up with a strategy right there and then.
Noble turning a little bit more of an eye towards Zapman, it would appear, with two Hunter bans coming out, the Amuzin Cobb and the Jingwei being taken off the table. And there's that Raijin ban that we were looking for. So SpaceStation now not going to have to worry about the double Rat.
It's just to be expected. Whenever you see a Morrigan selection come through, you think, okay, what is the Morrigan trying to transform into? And taking a look at the gods that have already been selected, Fafnir, Artio, Ganesha, not exactly ideal. Hu-Yi, there's some possibilities because Double Suns just covers a massive area for zone effect, and there's always the Raijin damage potential as well, but you always just got to keep in mind those jungle selections, because if there's one thing that teams never want to see flying at them, especially mid laners, it's the double Robins, the double Rads, double Najah ults. It's just always too much damage to try and handle.
How about double Susano?
Still not fun.
No, that's almost equally as scary when you got to worry about this high mobility jungler that Noble have now picked up for themselves to try and give Skeeledon a chance to have a big impact.
But to be completely fair, even though double Susano thread is pretty spooky, you also have to consider that Susano doesn't fare the greatest against the Artio with that cripple field. And not to mention that she also has that ferocious roar to help catch out an opponent in the middle of a combination. Plus, there's the Ganesha silence for the follow-up. Andinster's going to have the taunt on those taiko drums from Raijin. There's a decent amount of CC available to SpaceStation already to really try and help mitigate some of the damage that a double Susano combination could even try and bring out.
And don't forget, with the Morrigan, you're going to be leveling up your second ability, the Dark Omen, anywhere from levels 1 to 9 until you get it maxed out. So you really have to think about which other characters do you have in the game that have their second ability. And so far, the only one that you're really going to be transforming into until level 12 would be that Raijin, considering Raiju is good damaging ability with Susano. Wind Siphon, using that for more of an initiation. With Huyi, Mark of the Golden Crow, you're not using that as your main primary damage tool.
Thor and Hachiman locked in here for SpaceStation Gaming, and for my money, the name of the game kind of seems to be Control coming out from SpaceStation. Between the Thor, the Ganesha, and the Artio, they might not have too bad a hard time locking down that Susano.
And this looks like a draft that is going to deal a lot of crowd control in a very short space of time. Pretty much whenever those Dharmic Pillars come out, you can either expect SpaceStation to keep the fight going because they're finding the picks, or they just have the immediate disengage to fall back on as well. There is just so much peel readily provided for SpaceStation that it is going to be fairly difficult for Noble to try and handle if their positioning isn't on point.
And we've seen a bit of dissension here about Hachiman so far. Is Hachiman really strong? Is Hachiman not? They've gone with some other hunter pick. Alpha Jackal, yourself, where do you land here on this Hachiman pick?
I think Hachiman is good in the right hands, and Zapman is one of those right hands.
Oh, yeah.
You saw what he was able to do with the Jingwei into an unfavorable matchup like a Huyi. He just goes to the back camps, steals it away, and then has pressure instantly. If he's got something in mind to deal with this Huyi, with this Hachiman, he's going to bring it out here.
Now, we talked about how this Thor pick that could be pretty impactful here for Homiefe. It's something he works a lot and likes to use. But also now Morrigan has a semi-global she could borrow at any time too if she feels like going into that Thor.
Something about junglers and Thors, man, whenever it's on the line. And we already got a taste of Homiefe's Thor the other day in their set against Luminosity. Granted, it didn't pan out in the end for SpaceStation because Baskin just had a phenomenal turnaround. So hopefully Homife's not going to suffer any PTSD from that exact moment. It's all going to depend on how Moswal plays this Morrigan.
Amaterasu is the final pick coming out for Noble. That's very likely going to be going over to that solo lane pick, but now that we've had a chance to see both rosters get finalized out, how you feeling, Taco? SpaceStation or Noble?
I'm really digging SpaceStation's draft because of the control effect that they have. I love Noble to death. I love Moswal to death, but I feel like SpaceStation's going to take this one home.
All right, Alpha, who you got?
I feel if Noble are able to execute their higher execution comp better, then Noble should take it, otherwise SpaceStation.
All right, we're a little bit split over here on the desk. What about you, casters? Who do you think's going to take this one away?
Thanks so much, Finch. And joining me here on the cast is none other than the legendary, one-of-a-kind, Polar Bear Mike.
Hey, how are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
So you're in the finals tomorrow, first of all.
Yes, sir.
Second of all, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. He's got a pretty good Twitter game these days. Just after a certain time, it gets a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes it gets a little iffy in there, but I try my best.
So SpaceStation Gaming up against
really.
Noble. Noble obviously out Mike, but then again, SpaceStation, they have a very outside chance, but it's a long road for him to go.
Yeah, I feel like looking at the drafts, I actually liked Nobles a lot more, but I think because SpaceStation has more to lose, they have more to play for, they can actually still get a three-way tiebreaker scenario. I think that they'll come out strong.
So the three-way tiebreaker is still available, but it's going to be important, first of all, for SpaceStation Gaming to get this game under their belt. The way Noble have played so far, Mike, we've seen, you know, a couple of issues for him. Even in that Dignitas game, they had such a huge lead, but they let it go.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. They kind of just, like, thought Dig was going to give up because they got such a big lead, and then Dig just came back and then turned it on them completely.
So what do you want to do on this cast, Mike? Do you want to do play-by-play or do you want to do analysis?
Ooh,
I think you should do play-by-play.
I'll stick to analysis. I'll be good with that.
No. I think you should do play-by-play.
Maybe if the time is right.
Okay. I'll make sure the time's right every single time. Obviously, if I just finish a sentence and a team fight starts, you're going to have to jump in and do it, okay?
Yeah, of course. That's fine.
Cool. That was a bad idea. So start the game, Homiefe, Skeeledon on the right-hand side. We're going to see Whalrus and Skeeledon on this right-hand side as well. Whalrus playing the Amaterasu. He's played it a little bit more just lately.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a pick that has kind of gone away from the meta for a little bit because you don't really have that great ability clear on waves and all that, but he's picked it a couple times now, I think, in this round robin.
Mike, with that actually happening with Amaterasu now, is that something to do with like the early game isn't as huge as it used to be? Like you can get behind and still get back into it?
Well, the early game used to be previously in the spring when she would be picked up in support and solo. You used to fight a lot more at level 1. Now you can still fight, but it's more about clear, and she's not the fastest clear god. On jungle buff she is, which is what you saw them do right there.
Sure.
And now go get the wave under tower, but on the actual wave, her clear isn't the greatest.
So in lane, just basically farm under tower, very, you know, old school, as we've seen it from Amaterasu before, but it's not doom and gloom, really, if you start the box.
And she actually got a buff before before this tournament with her cooldown on her 2 going down a couple seconds, so it is interesting that Whalrus is the only one to pull it out. I would think that a couple more people would try it.
Well, Homiefe playing the Thor this time round. How have you felt about Homiefe's play? You know, obviously, the cast have been talking a little bit about him playing the Assassins.
Homie's been really hot and cold, I feel like, this entire weekend. I thought that versus Luminosity on Wednesday that he had a couple great games on the Bakasura and things like that. And then he kind of just disappears a little bit. So it's really interesting. I think Homie's had some good games in this. Even though they're 0-2 currently, I think he's had some good games already in the round-robin play.
Well, let's see how he does in this one. Very important game for SpaceStation. Zapman was tweeting himself about the fact that he thinks they're out and the team is a little bit demoralized, but there is always that outside shot. If you remember last year at Super Regionals, LG made it through by the skin of their teeth, relying on results elsewhere. And
you never really know. I believe last year we were one result away from having a 5-way tie, so you never really know anything could happen. And I think if SpaceStation comes in prepared today and they try really hard, as I say that Jigz is getting engaged on Skeeledon, gets a first blood at their back harpies, that is not good for SpaceStation. That's not what you want.
You can do the play-by-play. Look at that. Nice
I kind of can just do it all, you know?
Yeah, Jigz just out of position. That was the biggest issue there. The shell even used as well, but didn't keep him alive long enough. And that first kill going to Skeeledon, quite important, but the Hunters are dueling.
It looks like Wowy is actually getting the better of Zap here. Neither Hunter's level 5, so Zapman's probably just going to get away. I think Wowy jumped in to start that, so he can't chase it out.
Yeah, I think that's one thing fans at home play. Why didn't he jump? Why didn't he jump? But,
it was definitely on cooldown.
If he was on cooldown, you would have guaranteed Wowy would have jumped in to that right-hand side. Homiefe is going to swing to the right-hand side here. A bit more pressure onto Whalrus and pick up some farm. Obviously, in that lane matchup, that was going to be the case. Now, Wowy choosing to try and slow this wave down.
I think he actually could have froze that a little harder. I'm not sure. He's like last hitting the creeps, which is actually speeding up, pushing it towards Zap, but Hoyi definitely wins this matchup early game, I think, so allowing Zap to basically get a wave under tower, I don't really think that was a good decision by Wowy.
But on top of that as well, those banners that Hachiman's going to bring to the battlefield as well, not just useful for wave clear, but that attack speed actually is impactful.
Yeah, they actually do have a pretty good objective burn with the Hachiman, but the rest of the team comp doesn't really have the greatest objective burn, I suppose. But if they can CC like a Fafnir or something and then drop that, the attack speed still will matter to a Thor.
Skeely going to come across to the right-hand side. Stun comes out from Whalrus and now knocked up in the sky, but Homie lands beautifully to turn this one around. Scary D now looking to turn this one around, and he can't find the last life tap. So Whalrus will escape.
Whalrus got really... I'm going to go ahead and say that's luck. No way he knew he was going to live there, but... Actually, really interesting.
You
that
can't say that. You're a caster now.
Absolutely lucky. Interesting as well that Scary D actually elected to get the Aegis. That's something that he did with Artio versus Luminosity. I think that was into a Poseidon, though. But in this matchup, getting that Aegis completely saved him. I wonder if Whalrus and Skeeledon had recognized that, because it seemed like they pretty much got baited by it.
And what's the reason for the Aegis? I mean, obviously, you normally see that, like you said, for Krakens and things. There's not like a Kraken on this team. I mean, Andinster is going to be doing taunt probably more often than necessarily
right, yeah.
damage.
I think something that's interesting is that when Artio first came out, everyone thought she was broken, and then people just found ways to kill her. And I think Aegis is a good counter to that, where she doesn't need any like real health sustain or anything. She already has in-kit healing. She already has a ton of like lockdown and stick potential. So if you can just get a defensive relic to stop people from going on you, I think Scary loves it a lot.
And I guess with that Aegis too, those extra 3 seconds that it technically buys you, it does mean that you can turn that around and then get your cooldowns up for another rotation.
Right.
Well, back towards the mid lane now. Still Noble with that 1 kill of the game. It has been a bit of action out of SpaceStation Gaming and Noble so far. Mainly Noble on the aggressive, SpaceStation looking to respond.
Also interesting that Skeely and Wubbn invaded SpaceStation's back harpies and got a first blood on Jigz, but he's actually still out farming, Jigz is still ahead of farm with Wubbn, and he was ahead of Moswal as well, and that doesn't really make sense at all to me as to how that's happening.
Is Ganesha, though? I mean, Ganesha does have a little bit of a better idea of getting experience because of the passive?
Kind of, but to me, it must be that they're keeping better control of the neutral camps. Jigz has been in the mid lane pretty much the entire game. You see the Hunters have pretty much gotten solo farm. They're level 8 and level 7.
You're right, and I was thinking about that too. I mean, Fafnir, at the end of the day, he does have that coerce, which means you can tag a teammate, leave, and still get experience from the wave too, which is very, very useful for him. Left-hand side, Zapman just going to be continuing to farm under the tower, going for the full boots option here. We're seeing this out of a lot of Hachimans here, over going for the Devour's Gauntlets early, Mike. Do you know why?
I think it just depends. If you can't get that Devos on your first back or so, having the boots up for when the buffs respawn is a lot more impactful. And I think also Hunters haven't really been fighting that early game in this meta, so I think it's fine to delay the Devo Gauntlets a little bit. Makes
sense. And Andinster already got that Book of Thoth online. Seen a couple of Warlock Slash this week. Moswal under a bit of pressure in the mid lane here. Nice wall out of Homiefe. But unfortunately, he won't be able to get towards Moswal in time until the pickup is good. Skeeledon going to turn this one around attemptively. Jumps back in. Homie didn't know that was coming, but Skeeledon plays it well. Drums of War out from Andinster. Not going to connect. In comes Wubbn to try and make sure Zap can't pick up the kill. Skeeledon will live, but Moswal removed.
Yeah, if Moswal had just ran into the Fire Giant side jungle, he actually would have lived there, but Jigz with a great ultimate to cut him off when he turned into the Hachiman and then horsed out. Also interesting, Moswal throughout all of their games has pretty much gone Warlock Satch. This game, a much more aggressive route. He went for the Sands of Time Bumbas, and he actually went Traveler's Boots as well to try to get a little bit more gold and extend or accelerate his build.
You were saying as we were watching picks and bans too, mate. Like, we've not really seen much Moswal play Morrigan before. So this is
it's a guy that he can play. Anyone who has scrimmed this team knows that he can play it. But yeah, normally they elect to put him on things like
under pressure in the mid lane right now, being pressured again by Homiefe. Homiefe did have to use his beads there aggressively, but Skeely turns up once again.
Too. Wow.
2 was good out of Skeeledon to try and pull him in, but Homie still managed to...
Yeah, Homie just mashing his one button to try to catch that. That could have been really bad if Homie was not able to teleport to that hammer.
Well, now Skeely's going to rotate around to the right side, run into Scary D. And now an early bead from Skeely there, looking for pressure onto Scary. In the end, Scary's going to be able to walk away and gets a free beads out of Skeeledon.
Yeah, definitely a questionable beads by the Don, but... in the end, it's all right. Homie has his beads down as well, so you'll likely see both of these junglers just relax for a little bit.
Is that what we're going to call him on the cast? The Don?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just every now and then.
Just when he's good plays or bad plays?
From now on it'll be a good play he's the Don, yeah.
Cool, we've corrected that issue for the time. Left-hand harp is about to spawn Zapman in position, but Wubbn and Skeeledon on the way round to try and contest this. Bit of aggression between the two as Jigz drops the ultimate down. Wubbn still under pressure though.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's pretty much going to be a full disengage, that they're fighting so much over this neutral farm. Normally you don't see that. You'll see the buffs go onto the red buff, the speed buff, and all that. So, and also interesting that Jigz tried to initiate that fight with his jungler not having beads.
Well, it didn't work out well for SpaceStation game. It's still 1-1 though. Gold lead is in SpaceStation's favor as it stands. And I guess something like I mentioned, you might have been Jigz, but Jigz is now a little bit further behind in experience than that of Wubbn as he just hits level 8. Where is this lead really coming from?
Just neutral farm, I think, for the most part. I think every mid laner and support has been to every single neutral camp. The jungler trying to show up as well. Skilly probably just going to poke out Jigz a little bit. Nothing crazy going to happen here.
Just saw Homie on the right-hand side as well. Look for a bit of pressure onto Whalrus once again. You can see Homie's really putting work in this game. Being everywhere on the map, trying to initiate stuff. It's not necessarily working out, but at least he's putting aggression.
I actually like the way he's playing it a lot. Even if there's not kill potential in the Whalrus, you can at least give Scary a lot of lane pressure. And if you can kind of get that lane pressure as Artio and dominate and out-trade the Ama, then I think Scary will be able to out-rotate and do a lot in these team fights.
Well, let's see how this goes on, because Scary D now level 10, working towards his build. More than likely, Breastplate of Valonex, cooldown reduction, very useful for an Artio.
For sure. And also, it's interesting, you had mentioned that Zapman had elected to rush the boots. Yeah. Wowy actually did the opposite, so he's a few stacks ahead of him, about 30 stacks on that Devourer's Gauntlet. So I wonder if Noble might elect to take an early fight out of Gold Fury. They have the Morrigan and the Fafnir. They have a lot of good objective shred, and they can burn it down with the Yacht if they wanted to take that.
Without giving too much away about E-United's playstyle and what you guys favor here, but like the Gold Fury in the early game now, is it as impactful as it used to be? Do you feel like you have to go for it as early? Is it rewarding?
I feel like if you can invade buffs, that's normally a little bit better because you're denying from the other team. As I say, that Skilly goes in. Looks like it's just a bunch of nothing. Jigz will throw it on his ult just to disengage pretty much.
You can't say it's a bunch of nothing.
Yeah, it's a bunch of nothing.
No, you can't do that. You're supposed to get excited for the fans at home, Mike. Come on, you can't just do that.
I don't want to give them a false hope for a bad fight. Sorry.
Listen, we have to do that every day, okay? Especially when some of you teams play as well. Left-hand side, they can see Wubbn wrapping around the back to continue placing wards down around this area now and again to make sure there's some pressure onto Zapman. A lot of protection for Wowy on this left-hand side, just in case Homie does come visit.
Yeah, I think Wowy's actually had a majority of the lane pressure. As I say, that Skilly goes in, catches Scary D's dash, ults him. He does have the Aegis available, so I don't know if Scary D will go down here. The ult coming out of Whalrus, and it looks like Scary will be finding a Thor dunk out from Homie. Walls in, Skeeledon forces his beads. Looks like Skeeledon's going to go down here. Huge turn play from Scary and Homie.
Yeah, that just worked out well. I thought it was going to go for nothing now with Homiefe missing that ultimate. Splitting the uprights between the two. It did cause a couple of problems for him for a moment, but the Aegis came into play again, Mike.
Right, yeah. He just is able to bait out so many cooldowns cooldowns with that, and I think Noble has to be really careful about committing that much into Scaredy. It happened to them once, Whalrus barely lived, and now they really pay for it this time.
Got to be a little bit careful around the speed buff now. They're trying to get it down before Homie if he can get over here, as well as the mid lane and jungler out of Space Station 2. But it's too little too late for Moswal, who will drop down. Homiefe has the speed buff around his waist, which tells you they did manage to steal it too. Yeah,
and that play just is kind of a lack of experience to me from Noble. Whenever your jungler dies like that, they're always like, please defend my speed, I need that. But whenever you take that 4v3, you're just allowing Space Station to snowball like that. I believe Homie actually stole the speed, and then, oh yeah, he did.
How'd you deal with Scream then? So when Scream dies and he goes, defend my speed, what do you guys say?
I just say, you're dead, it's your own fault, and then peace out.
Okay, so that's how you deal with your own speed buff. He's like, if it goes down, it's the jungler's own fault.
Yeah, he understands it.
Okay, well, now a bit more aggression out of Space Station around this Gold Fury side. It's mainly because the Oracles are spawning. Wubbn and Wowy will be here to try and defend, but it is against 3, and it looks like Space Station will get both of those there, so Noble not able to get him just yet.
You were mentioning the way I kind of look at Gold Fury, and I can't give too much away, obviously, but I think that keeping Oracle control anytime there's like a Fafnir Hoyi type thing in the game, they have a lot of objective burn, so Space Station to keep control of those Oracles will deny Noble the opportunity to kind of go for those Gold Fury rush plays and set things up around there, and that's huge because I actually think Space Station's comp is going to scale a little bit better.
It's funny when you think about it too, about like how the additions of certain things like Oracles and the Portal Demon affected the map, and the one thing that always stands out, those Oracles, they do provide a free ward, which against somebody like a Thor who loves to ult from the Gold Fury pit means you want to control him anyway, just in case you can try and get an ult.
Yeah, I mean, not only are you denying Gold Fury plays and getting that vision, but you're also seeing when people come to ward your jungle, they have to walk through that pit a lot of the time, and also the ganks, as you mentioned.
That looks like a bit of a Portal Demon look from Noble eSports for a second here. Team members going to pull it. Wubbn and Whalrus. You mentioned Whalrus in the jungle. It ain't going to be too bad on an Amaterasu, especially at level 12.
Well, yeah, and also both of these characters, the Fafnir and the Amaterasu, as they commit to this Portal Demon, have really good objective shred. You're seeing that now, 2 tanks basically burning it as Andy comes around the corner. I think that was a little odd. I believe Moswal probably needed to be there for them to commit to that. So pretty much a wasted ultimate from Wubbn just to get the Portal Demon to like 30%.
It was good to see Andy just sniff that one out as well. He just had an idea. He's like, hang on a second, we're pressuring Moswal and Skeeledon in the mid lane. Where's the jungler and solo laner gone? So that works out well there for Noble eSports, just to, well, not for Noble, for Space Station, to not give up a free objective for nothing. Zapman, level 14 now, just a little bit ahead of Wowy, but Wowy does have another wave coming into him there, so that should even things up again.
If I'm Space Station and I see that play, I would be forcing pretty much a Gold Fury as soon as I can. 3 people on Noble don't have their second relic because they're not level 12 yet. You have an ultimate down from Fafnir. I feel like they have a great power play opportunity here if they go for it.
Well, it does seem to be the case right now. We've got 2 members on the right-hand side. Homiefe looking to pressure under Whalrus under the tower. That's going to force Wubbn to rotate over here to help out Whalrus a little bit. Skeeledon's going to put a bit of focus in. They do know his ultimate's down here, so could put a bit more pressure on as Andy will get a kill on Skeely in the mid lane with the assistance of Jigz there. Just at guess what time there, Mike? The speed buff spawning.
Yep, and it's going to happen again. They're probably going to come into this fight. Wubbn already low. I like that he's backing up this time. They can't really do much about it. However, since Wubbn is around here low, you might see them go towards the Portal Demon, but it looks like they'll just go back to farming.
Well, the mid-harpies are coming up on both sides as well. Well, we will at least get the left-hand ones before Space Station can sniff that out. But Andy with pressure in mid, and now Homiefe coming over, looking to poke out Moswal a little bit. That won't be too bad. Right-hand side, Whalrus trading out, but Homie bit off a bit more than he could chew there overall. Had to use his Aegis, a little bit worried about the pressure coming out from Wowy.
Yeah, he didn't have vision of Wowy coming around the corner there, so he does have to use his Aegis, but not the end of the world. He's still got good poke, and he still has map pressure, and with how the game has gone so far, I don't think he'll be needing it for a bit.
Looks like Zap did just manage to steal that one away by the looks of it as well. Just over the wall with that banner. In comes Wubbn though, looking for a potential hammer, but Jigz with a silence straight away. The hammer was still good out of Wubbn though, and Zap under pressure. What are we going to jump on as well? The shell is pretty useful, but now he's going to have to turn tail with the horse and get away from the danger zone.
Oh, he actually came back in. If Wubbn was still looking at him, he might have been able to turn that. Andy, though, right by, gets the Oracles. Or actually, Wubbn may be able to steal one of them away, and it looks like he will try to take control of it.
Oh, he did. Just 1-for-1 split there overall. Right-hand side, you can see Skeeledon's now come over here to soak some experience. He's currently level 11. A lot of that's down to the 2 deaths, and after both those deaths, he lost his speed buff twice, which is why he's so far
behind. All of Noble actually getting a little bit out-farmed. I believe Zap is also about half a level up on Wowy. They're both 15 right now. Wubbn also about a level and a half down on Jigz. So they're all just kind of passively getting out-farmed from that neutral farm that I was mentioning early. The Oracles and the mid-harpies not really going in their favor.
So you mentioned about SpaceStation game and they scale it okay into the mid to late game here? Is
yeah,
that how
for
you
sure.
Feel? Are
yeah,
they going to outscale Noble overall? Or?
I think SpaceStation's mid-game until we get to about 20 to 25 minutes. I think they're a bit stronger. Once we see Noble get to 25 minutes and Morrigan can start to one-shot people and we have Fafnir get his items online while we get his kin size, then I think Noble's probably a bit stronger, but it's really close.
Oh, a bit of a difference in jungler builds as well. They are both playing assassins, but two different types to an extent. Obviously, Homiefe here going for the Heartseeker, which has seen a rise to prominence a little bit more, whereas Skeeledon going for the Hydra, which we've not seen too much of just lately.
I think another item that's interesting is that Whalrus actually elected to go Pestilence in the second item right after his boots against the Artio, but the Artio is the only person really healing there. And normally on Amaterasu, you want to get a bit of CDR, something like a Genji's guard. I think maybe it would have been a little bit better.
It is good for magical resistance, magical protection, though, I guess. And
yeah,
you're going to be dealing with Raijin too?
I think it's pretty close. I believe Genji is actually, with the health included, would probably make you a little bit tankier and also giving you the cooldown to pop your one Azama and get that healing. So personally, I don't like the choice from Whalrus, but I think it is fine if they're trying to engage on Scary. We've seen that a couple times, seen the Aegis come into play. So it'll be really tough to kill Scary, but the Pestilence surely will help with that.
And I guess that's the thing with Season 4 now. There's a lot of builds that are viable, even though it's personal taste more than anything else of like which way you would like to go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the items are pretty much just situational, and a lot of them are very strong. So I don't think it's horrible for him to go Pestilence here. It looks like Wubbn's actually going to get poked out a bit in the jungle. The speed buff coming up again, and you see SpaceStation putting 4 people over here. Yeah,
it was a lot of pressure out of Scary, and that's tier 1 on the right-hand side too, which forced Skeeledon over. But once again, Skeeledon seems to die whenever his speed buff spawns. The good news is his team did secure the speed for it, give it over to Moswal, but in comes Homiefe looking for the dunk and the extra pressure.
Yeah, he's just going to force them out here. Gets a good wall onto Wubbn. We see Andy just force out Wubbn's ultimate with the Taiko drums. Wubbn actually getting completely committed on. Whalrus gets a good ult to peel for him to force a Scary D off. And Zapman, the classic Zapman dive between the towers. He'll pay for that. Scary D going back in, and it looks like it'll just be a 2-for-1 trade in favor of SpaceStation.
And the pickup kill actually was from Moswal, who turned into Hachiman for Zapman to actually pick up that kill with the autos as he ran away, and the banner as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when Moswal's getting engaged on that. He's going on to the Hachiman. You would think you'd maybe pick a tankier target like the Amo or like the Artio to try to get out if he's in danger like that.
Yeah.
Also, Skeely at the start of this engagement for the 3rd time now, just completely alone, not grouping with his team. And he didn't even use his beads there when he died. He just ate all of their damage, all their CC. Really questionable for Skeely to not group with his team.
And that's where the big difference really seems to be in the jungle right now. Homiefe versus Skeeledon, that's 3 speed buff attempts at being stolen away, but 3 kills onto Skeeledon in a row at the same time as that speed buff has spawned. It's been a bit of a tricky situation. Because of that, it means Whalrus is being isolated a little bit more on this right-hand side, meaning that tower is really falling down now.
Yeah, I'd like to see SpaceStation start to convert this lead into some objective forces or go for some pick plays. Right now, they're kind of only playing for farm. You see the tower is low in the solo side. I feel like at any moment, if Homie chose to rotate over there and force a wave into that tower, is Scary, they could take that tower. We've
noticed with SpaceStation this tournament, at least, Mike, as well, is that most of the time they seem to be a counterpunch team. They don't like to be the initiators. I mean, this game, even now, they're kind of being forced into initiating, but they don't want to. They'd rather let the other team seem to do it for them.
Yeah, generally, I mean, that's just their style. When you have Zap and Andy, and they're each extremely confident that they can carry a game, they just want to keep farming and keep getting ahead. So they are a bit of a more reactive team, but they can still make plays if they're given the opportunities that we've seen in this game.
This could be one. Wubbn in a bit of trouble here, knocked up, doesn't get a chance to use his ultimate
forces the ult out of Skeeledon. That's a big deal. Now that that ultimate's down, SpaceStation has a big advantage. Zapman and Andy are both going to be much safer with that ult down.
A little bit surprised by that too, because that was an ult used by Skeeledon to defend Wubbn, who's Fafnir. Like, he could ult himself if he needed to, and, you know, keep himself out of the danger.
Yeah, speaking of Wubbn on the Fafnir, I had mentioned earlier that they didn't have their level 12 relics yet. He actually just got that, and he did something that Raffer was doing yesterday with the horrific emblem. I like that a lot. You can upgrade it, reduce the damage from SpaceStation a lot. Sure. If you can get that on the Raijin, his ult will do much less damage. A really interesting pickup.
And as long as they play around that sprint as well that you can see for Jigz, it can come into play even more so, because just slowing down the mobility of everybody, especially when Noble do have a pretty mobile composition here that they've put together for themselves, especially additional to the Amaterasu that's going to give everybody a movement speed.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the way that Andy and Homie are playing this. They're playing the corners and going for a lot of poke, just kind of choking Noble out, keeping ward pressure around their side of the jungle. So I think it's a really nice job. Probably see a similar play right here. Gets a good wall on the Skilly, but I don't think he'll go in verse 2.
Yeah, cancels out the pull from Skeeledon there. Right-hand side, you can see Whalrus starting to do a bit of proxy farming now, but that proxy farming could come back to haunt him.
See Scaredy rotating here right out of base. It looks like SpaceStation wants to force this fight. They feel like they have an advantage. The Susano ult that we mentioned earlier is actually just about to come off cooldown probably within the next 15 seconds, so we might see a fight break out.
Let's see if that works out. Mid lane, though, Homiefe under pressure from Whalrus coming in around the back there. Cancels out the spin to win, but the rest of Noble falling back. Meanwhile, 3 members of SpaceStation still on this gold, and only Wowy here to try and help out.
Yeah, and it looks like SpaceStation's actually getting a much better trade from the Skeeledon actually on his speed. A 5v4. Homiefe dunks in on Moswal in the back, forces both relics. A big ult to peel for Whalrus.
Wow. Big old commit there for Moswal more than anything else there, Mike. They've went all in. And now it seems that Noble have got to run away. Their composition is in tatters. The thorns from Whalrus won't keep him alive long enough. Zapman gets a double kill as he picks up Wubbn too. And meanwhile, Skeeledon, well, at least he got his own speed buff this time, but he's not going to be able to get involved in this goal.
Skeeledon is just doing so much in these fights. He was crippling the entire front line of Noble, just chasing them out, doing massive amounts of damage, and even now zoning Wowy at his own tier 2. Really, again, a big issue. I mentioned the poke in the middle lane. Skeely got forced to about 40% health, had to go to his speed. It allowed SpaceStation to take a 5v4, get Gold Fury low, and then Wowy doesn't have that all. He used it to contest the gold, and then SpaceStation just gets a free fight.
Now, there is 8,000 experience and just under 4,000 gold lead for SpaceStation now. We talk about gold. We used to talk about gold a lot in the old days, but it's not as important now as much as experiences.
Yeah, now it's pretty much all experience, and now you'll actually see SpaceStation pick up the Portal Demon with people being dead on Noble, as well as the Relic advantage in favor of SpaceStation. Skeeledon uses the ult to try to secure a little bit too early there. And now we'll see Homie, now that Skilly is poked out and Whalrus had now just respawned, pushes a wave into the solo tower. That'll be very close to getting that, though it looks like Skilly is going right for it.
Yeah, Skilly should be able to get at least stop that for the time being, but it's 9-2 now. That experience lead is actually being shown on characters that you want them to really be on, mainly Homiefe versus Skeeledon. And you've got a little bit of a lead for Scary D now over Amaterasu. It's not going to matter for them individually, but when it comes to team fights, you know, being behind as a solo laner means you can't frontline as hard as you would like to.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the experience and the gold deficit, with the 5k gold lead, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, it's a big deal, but if you just look at the experience, both duo laners 2 levels up, mid laners 1 level up, Homiefe 2 levels on Skilly, and Scary D just got 2 levels up on Whalrus. So the experience massively in favor of SpaceStation.
Biggest item thing that I can see this tournament as well, Mike, honestly, looking through it, has been the Stone of Gaia. Did everybody know about it and just didn't want to talk about it because they wanted to run it, or has everyone just started to adapt it because of it?
I think people are just copying Deathwalker, honestly.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I thought, but
yeah,
I think say that.
I think it's really good on Gladiator, on Gladiator Warriors, where you get that extra healing from the passive.
Sure.
I'm not sure I really like it in this situation. For Scary, I actually like it because if Susano commits on him and he has those 2 knockups, he can regen a lot. As for Whalrus, the only knockup is really just the Ganesha 3, and I doubt Ganesha is going to be dashing into Whalrus on most of these fights, likely using it on the carries or other people.
But I don't think people are just getting it for the passive. It feels like it's actually the regen that we're seeing it more for. It seems to be with these sort of characters we're seeing picking it up.
Yeah, the passive regen is really nice, and also now that we've seen these tankier junglers, as you see Homie has the Void Shield, stuff like that, we're not seeing as many Brawlers beat sticks anymore, so the healing comes into play much more.
And obviously it keeps you in combat a little bit longer. You don't have to return to base if you can stay out of combat for a little while. That regen does pay dividends. Zapman on the left-hand side, I can just put a little bit more pressure on.
Looks like Andy and Homie may collapse on Moswal in the mid lane, get a beads out of Skeeledon. Homie actually getting forced very low as Aegis used. Skilly tries to use his ult for peel, but he's just going down.
And now the drums come out from Andinster as well, keeping Moswal pinned in place. The Aegis now burnt, and Moswal will not survive much longer there. The damage out from Jigz securing the kill for Scary D. Wubbn forced out in the mid lane, and he can't really do much against all 4 members here as SpaceStation Gaming grouped up. Homiefe
and again, the speed is up when Skilly is dead. Moswal and Skilly just being caught out of position far too often against this team. When you have things like a Thor and an Artio, their dive potential is insane, especially with the range on the ultimate out of the Raijin. You can't be just walking through the jungle alone as if you're going to be fine.
Speaking about walking through the jungle alone, Wowy's going to be careful here. He's looking to try and defend this red buff, but he's going to have to give up the goose there with the rotation coming in from the other 3 members of SpaceStation here. Homiefe in the right-hand side will push out the solo lane side of things as well as that returns back to the dual lane.
And whenever you're at a point like this where the map is kind of just not really that contested, you don't have the Gold Fury up, you don't have Portal Demon up, SpaceStation doesn't want to try to force a Fire Giant yet, you're really just trying to keep lane pressure, keep all the waves pushed, pressure out their jungle, get deep vision as you can see around their red buff and all of that, and to see if they can go for dive plays, get a few kills. In this case, they actually have relics down for Skilly and Moswal, and I think they'll force that again as soon as they can.
So picking your brain a little bit, Mike, about the situation here. If you are Noble, and we always ask this, but like, what do you do here? What's the game plan from Noble now? Is it still just like hold on for late, even though you mentioned Space have a better late game?
They basically just need to group. At this point, they're so far behind that they're going to get out-traded. You see Scary D just running 2 people down, just chasing Whalrus forever. I don't think he'll get the kill, but he actually...
might.
Oh my gosh.
He might still be able to get a kill. Sprint pops as well, I believe, to keep the pressure on. Skeely, though, still getting some support, and it forces a shell, too, to make sure Skeeledon gets away.
See, and this is why those ganks earlier in the game onto Scary D cost Noble so much. They got baited twice, and Skeeledon getting those kills is just huge for him. He's able to do whatever he wants now. No way they can stop him.
Meanwhile, left-hand side, where he's under pressure as Homiefe comes around the back as well. All that pressure from Scary in mid has pulled so much attention. They've left Wowy on his own, who's now going to surrender his tier 1 tower.
See, and now all of Noble, because people are getting poked out, because people can't stay in the lanes against their 1v1 matchups, they're just getting completely caught out of position. Now, Skeeledon actually getting fully committed on, did use his Aegis, but will go down to basically off, basically 4 aughts. Yeah, everything but the Morrigan aught. The entire team just on Scary, a little bit out of position there. But in the end, it didn't really matter too much. They still got actives out of Wowy. They still got the tier 1 tower. And Scary should be alive before this Gold Fury is taken.
And talk about the Gold Fury, that's a good opportunity then for SpaceStation, knowing that Noble invested so much in that to maybe look potentially at that next Gold Fury. Portal Demon up around the same time, however. So there's an opportunity maybe for one-for-one trades across the map, unless nobody realizes it.
Yeah, I think if you're Noble, you cannot afford to give up both of these objectives again. That'll almost guaranteed result into a loss of Fire Giant as well if you give up portal control like that. So they really have to be around this Gold Fury. You'll notice they actually have 20 seconds left on Scary's respawn timer. So they have a 4v5 here for the time being, and we'll see if they try to force this Gold Fury.
Well, Gold Fury started up. Zap's the only one really here. Now being joined by Andinster and Homiefe. Will comes out, double tap on Wowy, and Wowy takes so much damage there. He's forced out, but Homie's already in the sky, looking to land. Didn't choose the target of Wowy, though. It was more on zone, as Whalrus committed, but he's just not tanky enough to weather the storm coming out from SpaceStation.
Yeah, and I think the way Homie played that was actually perfect. It kept the entire team of Noble away from peeling from Whalrus. The second Whalrus' ult was down. You saw all SpaceStation turn on them. Now they're heading over towards the Fire Giant, and they'll be looking to siege. Skeeledon now respawned, able to zone over here, able to get the Fire Giant buff for himself. And then more importantly, you also notice that Noble couldn't really fight into that because they were trying to force a 4v5, but Wowie's actives were down. He had to jump away from the Raijin, and Andy almost soloed him.
Well, it looks like SpaceStation tried to speed things up. They started the portal demon, changed their man, and went, you know what? We could just do the Fire Giant
And here you see that banner really come into play, putting it on top of the Fire Giant, everyone getting a little bit more DPS with the attack speed.
So Fire Giant goes down, portal demon soon after. This is Noble's last game, but it is keeping hope alive for SpaceStation. Obviously, it's a lot of hope that they need, but Mike, it's going okay so far.
Yeah, I mean, they basically need everything to go right, and that all starts right here. You can't take a team like Noble for granted, even though they're out of it and they can't make Worlds. They still want to win. They still want to have fun together. So yeah. I like that SpaceStation kind of came out. They picked like an early game draft sort of and had Homie and Scary pressure that side of the map, try to put their foot on their throats and just force this lead like they are now.
And when you mentioned that, when you talk about early game draft, you really just talk about Scary Homiefe here in that compo. Really?
Yeah, really just the plays that they were making. I mean, we saw that Jigz even got first blood and it just didn't matter because their 2v2 fight between the Artio and the Thor is so much stronger than the Ama and the Susano.
Well, if you're just tuning in, we saw Dignitas versus Noble earlier on in Game 1. Game 2 is SpaceStation versus Noble. The next two sets are very, very important. It's a double header for energy. They're only one win away from securing a potential spot at Worlds for themselves here. Obviously, there's a chance of different tiebreakers, but their first game is going to be against Trifecta, a team that really needs to win this one as well, Mike, if they want to have a shot.
Yeah, another team who still has a shot, and they need to actually win at least 2 games today to clinch their own spot. There is a tiebreaker scenario that involves SpaceStation as well if they were to only win 3, but you never want to take it out of your own control. I'm sure Trifecta's going to look to come out strong.
And then the other one, if you're not a North American fan, well, you got a European head-to-head of Elevate versus Energy, which is another spicy endeavor. Have you got money on either of those two teams, would you say?
I would take Energy slightly, but I think Elevate has been so impressive to me this entire weekend. Yeah, only slightly.
Wow, I was expecting a little bit more. You know.
I'm just expecting that those two teams would have scrimmed a bit before this, and that Energy probably has an idea of how they want to deal with the Triple Guardian Double Hunter comp out of Elevate.
So, yeah, we'll see how those Energy games go, and the Elevate one a little bit later on. Right now, SpaceStation, though, in a prime position to close this one out. Is this a number you kind of expected at the LAN here, or have they underperformed? Have they done what we expected them to do? Have they at least
to be honest, I thought they were the weakest team. That doesn't. I'm not trying to. You know,
I don't. I think they know that too.
I'm not trying to disrespect them. I think that they have a lot of potential to grow, but for now, I think when you're going up against the world-class talent like this, it's really difficult. As we see Noble actually try to engage out of the Phoenix, forcing Zapman's beads. Homie, I believe, up in the air, going to look for a target. He's actually going to crash onto Whalrus and use the remainder of the Raijin ult. Hachiman ult comes in, Ganesha ult. Whalrus getting thorns, and he actually will be cleaned up by Skeeledon. Zap might die to the Phoenix forces his Aegis.
Had to Aegis away there. You know what, Mike? I think I'm just going to let you cast the rest. Go on.
Oh, Moswal goes in and actually gets Andy's beads and Aegis out. Skeeledon going to be able to clean that up with his ultimate. We see Wubbn jump in and stun Homiefe. Noble's turning this so well. It's a 4v4 right now, and they actually have Skeeledon isolated here. That's the Aegis out of him. Susano too, and they interrupt the dash out of Moswal, turning into the Raijin. Great defense by Noble. It's actually something they've been known for, is their Phoenix defense. They always stall these games.
I'm going to go and get a drink, okay?
No.
No, you do fine. Like, you don't need me.
Nah, dude, I can't do that.
Do what?
I can't keep doing that.
Why?
It'll hurt my voice before tomorrow.
No, it doesn't.
Nah, I got a game, dude.
You need a voice for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Why? Are you shot caller or something?
Just so I can like yell at everybody, you know.
What's the main person you have to yell at?
Probably Baskin and Mass, just to like put them in their place, kind of.
Gotcha. So it's not even your own team you want to yell at; it's the enemy team.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes some sense. And I'll let you do that. If it was your own team, I'm like, we could give him a bit of a respite from being yelled at by you, Mike, all the time. That'd have been nice. So 30 minutes in, it's kind of going as most people would have expected. SpaceStation Gaming would have been hoping to be in a much better position here today coming into it, sitting at 0-2 right now. This will put them at 1-2. Gold Fury due up in about 2 minutes time. Fire Giant still on 3 members of SpaceStation. But the good news is this is what we've seen a little bit more of this season, Mike, as time's gone on. The Phoenix defenses have got better. And is that because it is a little bit tankier as well? That obviously people will say that initially.
I think another thing that you'll notice is whenever teams are struggling, as SpaceStation did right there to Siege of Phoenix, if you just look at the engage, Ganesha not really the greatest at engaging under Phoenix.
Sure.
Same with an Artio, same with the Thor. Homie really would have to lead in with his dunk, and that's not something you want. So whenever you have the defense out of a Hoyot that can just zone so much, same with Susano and Ama to force people back, it's really hard to kind of fight while also hitting the Phoenix now with all those changes.
I think the big thing is that it's so telegraphed when SpaceStation are going to engage, because it's going to have to be like the Dominic pillars out of Ganesh. Talking about those, they're straight on Skeeledon's
Great wall
face.
and alt combo by Jigz and Homie, finding Skeeledon out of position without his beads up. Wubbn also going to get engaged on. Actually, his mantle will save him for the time being, but still going to get chased down. You see the wall and the silence coming out of Jigz and Homie. So 2 picks basically for free. They should be able to get a Phoenix off of this, and then if they get another kill, maybe look to end the game. Otherwise, you'll see them just go towards fire.
Should Wobbn have ulted there after the hammer, maybe? Or do you reckon he was right to try and hold on to it?
I think that they were probably just way too out of position. Noble wasn't really around to counter engage as Whalrus tries to force them off, and Andy probably going to turn this with the Taiko drums. Looks like Whalrus will be all right for now. Thorn's force. But for now, Whalrus has to go heal. They have a 5v1 on this Phoenix. Wowy tries to do what he can to zone them out. Don't think it'll be enough.
Won't be this time round, no. But Scaredy's a little bit far forward here. Moswal going to commit. Nice little stun. Follow up from Whalrus a little bit off the mark.
His Aegis is actually still down for a few seconds, but oh my goodness, Homie just shredding Moswal. Whalrus also getting forced out, and Wowy as well with the Dharmic Pillars coming back up from Jigz. The silence over the wall, actually a really nice play.
But it still turns around again. Zap's going to go out for Skeeledon, but we did lose Homiefe there as well. Wubbn to fall next, and it's only Whalrus left alive. Can Whalrus defend this, Mike? You're standing up. You think it's over?
That's game over. That's GG.
100%?
Yeah, GG. 100%.
So this game then looking like it's going to go to SpaceStation for now. That's going to give them that 1 win that they need to try and stay in contention. It's still going to be a long old day in doing this. Zap's being zoned out by Whalrus, though. This time around, he won't claim the life of Zapman. And that is the game for SpaceStation. Surprise, Mike?
No, not at all.
Not really?
No, I think SpaceStation had to win this game if they want to even have a chance. And I think they played a pretty good game.
Okay. That's been fantastic, by the way. You've done a good job so far.
Thank you. It was fun.
Do you want to take my job today?
No, sir. I think you do it a little bit better. Just a little bit, though, not too much.
I could do a break.
Nah, it's all right.
You sure? I'll play tomorrow.
Definitely no.
You sure?
Yeah, that'll be me.
Okay.
I'll take that.
That's fine. Well, that was game 1, obviously, one game between SpaceStation and Noble. We've still got a couple of games to come today as well. Let's talk a little bit about those games, obviously, because that game ended a little bit quicker than our desk was ready for, so we'll talk about that a little bit as the Noble boys now packing up their gear for today. We've got Trifecta versus Energy up next. Now, Energy, obviously, two-time world champions. Do you reckon it's going to be 3, first of all?
Probably not.
No?
Not if I can help it, at least. I'd like
That's what I want to hear.
Heck yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, no, well, I think this game is actually really interesting because Trifecta almost beat Energy 2-0 at DreamHack Valencia. They used to have Ionic back then, now playing with Aurora, but the draft that we saw in the round-robin play yesterday from Trifecta, very reminiscent of what they played at DreamHack. So I think they still have a good shot in this best-of-1 versus Energy here.
I'm talking about that DreamHack just a little bit more as well. I mean, going back to that, with Ionic and Aurora now, obviously Aurora now in, Ionic out, what's the big differences there? Because there is different playstyles between the two, surely.
Yeah, I think it mainly is just team playstyle. I think Ionic was more of the Fafnir Terra main, would play more of the meta stuff. I think he had great synergy with Snoopy. They played together for so long. Aurora coming in, I think he plays off of his mid lane a little bit more. I think Hurry had a pretty good split with him, but getting used to a new support like that, especially the role of support, can be so impactful, and I think they're still trying to learn how to play together.
And obviously we saw a little bit of energy as well, I guess, with Maniac having the same sort of issue where Maniac transitioned to this team and getting away from Dimmy.
Yeah, and then we saw something that we've never seen yesterday, which is adapting, basically building and playing full tank along with Maniac and just trying to be kind of like bullies in that solo lane.
Well, Mike, I'll let you go. The desk is now ready to break it down for us there. Let's head over to the desk and they can tell us all about how that game went down.
Welcome back here to the desk after that SpaceStation versus Noble set. Unfortunately, Noble not able to find a win there, but SpaceStation's hopes are still alive. I got Veneno here with me, along with Aggro. Tell me a little bit about what happened here.
Look, SpaceStation just looked like the team that we kind of expected them to be coming into this event, and Noble just wasn't able to keep up. It was consistent pressure on the right-hand side of the map for SpaceStation. Skeeledon and Whalrus falling behind it's just too hard to come back from.
No, definitely. It looked like Noble wasn't really like playing as a unit. They were all playing like separate, and SSG was doing like combos perfectly and everything perfectly. SSG looked like what they were supposed to look like.
There's a lot to talk about with the game, but I want to ask you, how'd you like your boy up there on the caster desk? How'd that work for you?
Yeah, Mike was definitely doing really well.
Yeah.
I was making fun of him the whole time, but Mike definitely did really well.
No, we all were back here. We're all just laughing.
Yeah, he did really well for PBM. No, you know, he did a good job.
Yeah, his tier 2 was great. I mean, with that kind of analysis going, I can see why y'all have been doing so well. But you were taking down this last game for me just a little bit here. We saw it actually started off kind of well for them. Skeeledon, I believe, even gets first blood or at least gets off to a good start. And things still kind of end up getting away from Noble. And that's sort of been their story this weekend.
Yeah, they've had a tough time closing games, and that's been their story for all of Season 4, basically. And, you know, you can see the pieces starting to come together for this squad. It's very common for teams to get off to a good start whenever they're starting to kind of turn the page from a bad team to a good team, and then it's tough to try and finish those games off. Noble's in that transition period from a team that was at the bottom end of the SPL and now can start to compete with the top teams in North America. It's just going to take them a little bit of time to get the ball rolling and learn how to finish those games.
Yeah, Slaney has been doing a really good job as well with the coaching. Like, I know, like, right when Slaney got on, Noble has gotten, like, so much better. It's been really, he's been doing a lot, I know that for sure.
Well, Noble struggling just a little bit, but as you said, they did look good in all those games. Don't want to say that Noble looked bad this weekend. Despite the 0-5, we all know they're way better than that. On the other end, though, SpaceStation keep their hopes alive with that win, and I think a big part of it was Scary D on that Artio. He was a monster in that game.
Look, when an Artio in the solo lane gets to get that much free farm and have no real attention paid to it from the other side, and it's not on Skeeledon's fault necessarily, it was because of how much pressure the rest of SpaceStation was putting on his side of the jungle. Scary gets all that farm, all those items, all that level, and Artio from ahead is just, it's really tough to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, Salt used to play Artio all the time in SPL. You guys got to see it. And, like, he loves being ahead with that character. He feels unkillable, and he's just, like, destroying everybody. He's like, yeah, let's just go in, keep fighting, let's go.
No, I mean, and that's what it was for Scary D. He was nigh unkillable in that game. But something that I think is a big key for them, and I want to ask you about this one too here, Veneno. Homiefe also looked really good on this Thor. It feels like when Homiefe is online, then SpaceStation's online.
Yeah, I think Homie really does lead the team, like, completely. Like, if he's having a good game, everybody's having a good game. Like, he knows how to shift his lead to everybody else and make everything really, really well for everybody and just carry the game, basically.
And that's why we talk about him with such high regard all the time as far as North American junglers go, because he has this potential to be a leader in a team with a ton of superstars on it. I mean, to be a leader for Andinster, Jigz, and Zapman isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, but Homie's good enough at Smite that he can do that and be that leading voice. He's just got to learn how to do it whenever he doesn't have the big leads. That's the key for great players, is how well can you play, how well can you identify that you're behind, adjust your play style to it, while still keeping being aggressive where you need to be.
And that's a good point you make up there, Aggro. SpaceStation Gaming, they do have a lot of great players, but they also have a lot of big personalities there. I'll ask you a little bit about this one too, Veneno, because you all kind of do as well.
Yeah.
What's it like when you're on a team with that many voices in there, with that many strong personalities?
It definitely takes a while for everybody to, like, mesh together. Like, for us personally, it did definitely take a while.
Yeah.
Like, there's, like, communication issues and stuff like that. You just gotta, like, you can argue it out in scrims and everything like that, and then you gotta, like, focus on the game. You know it's a game. You're all trying to be teammates, and you just gotta, like, adapt to each other, and you can't be, like, arguing over and over and over again, because you want to be the best you can at all times.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up there. Even if there's those big personalities, everyone got to be able to communicate. That communication is so important. But yes, SpaceStation get that win, and they've got a bit of a difficult path to go here from now, Aggro. They got to win out, and they'd also probably prefer if maybe Trifecta took this one over Energy.
So SpaceStation's still alive. They need to have either whoever wins the Elevate Energy matchup to go undefeated, and then have Trifecta beat the team that lost that matchup. So it's a little confusing. Basically, one of the two EU teams needs to go 5-0, and the other one needs to lose to Trifecta while SpaceStation wins out and Trifecta can win their other matchup. SpaceStation can force a three-way tie at 3-2, but they're going to need some help. Their destiny is out of their own hands, and it's a lot to ask for, to be in a position where you're not controlling your own destiny. It's tough. I mean, you can only do so much.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. Because they can only get 3 wins, that means if any of the other teams go up to 4, then it's kind of too hard for them if they're both at that 4 level. So that's an easier way to break it down for you. But